How's it going, guys? The Pretty Boy Offense. My name's Saj, and we're going to do top three games I love for the week 6 of NFL Survivor picks and top three games I hate for week 6 NFL Survivor picks. So, as I mentioned before, this is one of the first weeks where we have to start dealing with buys, and we have the San Francisco 49ers, the New York Jets, Atlanta Falcons, and the New Orleans Saints all on bye. So that's 2 games already with all those teams on bye that we can't pick from. So now we have to start considering that the pools are going to be smaller that we're going to be picking from. And, the hate and love games are going to, kind of reflect that as well. I try to stay away from some like super obvious matchups in like my first couple of videos, but now we're going to have to start like delving into those and actually understanding why we love and hate those just with, the amount of teams just being a lot less. All right, so we're going to start with the love games this week. And as I kind of mentioned before, this was like a really interesting week of football. And the reasons we're going to talk about why we love these games to bet on is because they feel like the sure things. And now I want to stay away from always picking like the obvious good team versus the bad team because like you guys can do that homework without me. Like you don't need that. But when we start looking at this week, when we want to start talking about how we love games, it's going to now with these bye weeks boiling up, like coming up and stuff, like we have to consider that. So the first game that I love is the Chiefs versus the Washington football team. And I know I've been like super critical of the Chiefs and super hard on the Chiefs, but I think that they're capable of just outgunning Washington. I've been very, very, very transparent about how I feel about Taylor Heineke and how Washington's dealing with that whole quarterback situation. A bit of a narrative here. Washington's kind of under fire, retiring Sean Taylor's number this weekend after all the John Gruden stuff that's been coming out and how it's linked back to the Washington football team and, the Washington press investigation with, the all the like harassment and abuse that went on in this organization for so long. And then that whole issue kind of got buried in the summer in July. So there's a lot of like negative press going around with Washington. But when we start dealing with the actual football side of things, they're just playing bad football. And so are the Chiefs. But the Chiefs will capitalize on teams like Washington, even when they're playing bad. Versus like if the Chiefs are playing the Chargers or the Ravens or something, and the Chiefs play bad, they still can't beat those teams because those teams are competent. The Washington football team is not. So first game I love, take the Chiefs over Washington. And then just kind of like a note on the Chiefs. It might be better to use the Chiefs like earlier than we would have liked. Just seeing them falter as much as they have in the season so far, this seems like is a slam dunk game for them. And as the season progresses, we don't know what their situation will be. The AFC is relatively competitive, so they're going to be fighting to the end. But I think every opportunity this team's had to fight, they've choked. So maybe we'll just take them in a dunk in this, and we kind of planned on using them later at the beginning of the season. We wanted to use them at the end because we want to save the really good teams, but this may be the right time to use the Chiefs. It kind of feels like they're trending down, so that's why I love this game a lot. It all kind of makes sense right now. All right, the next game I love, Texans versus Colts. Let's go Colts over Texans. Again, this is competent team versus bad team. The Colts, Carson Wentz started throwing the ball well against the Ravens. He's shown that he's alive. He's got a pulse. He can do some things. Pittman is playing well. Finally got his touchdown and stuff like that. And then it's just as long as Davis Mills is there. Davis Mills played a great game against the Patriots, but I think the Colts defense, the way you want to stop rookie quarterbacks is rush them, blitz them, force him to be a good quarterback. Don't just sit on your hands and let him be a good quarterback. And the Colts have the artillery to do that on defense. So really comfortable with the Colts over the Texans. We got to just start milking it. I think the Texans are one of the worst teams as long as they have Davis Mills there. And until Tyrod Taylor comes back, that's not going to change. So moving on from that game, we have the Monday night game, the Bills versus Titans. Now, this is the one where the opponent of the 3 love games is probably the most competent, is actually half decent, but they're just not playing well. And the Bills match up really nicely with that secondary in Tennessee that is just not really solidified, is really not too competent right now. So I'm really confident taking the Bills here. And like I said, as these pools kind of get smaller for teams that we're picking, I really appreciate the consistency of the Bills now. After they had that bit of a hiccup at the start, Josh Allen has really found his way in this season, really kind of getting back to like that great form that we saw He's still just like, being like a good quarterback in the league. So he's going to take advantage of the Titans. The Titans are a team, like, again, just like on the down. Like, I don't think this is going to be a game. It feels like the Titans only win games that Derrick Henry takes control of. And I just don't think Derrick Henry's going to have the legs to really control the Bills for a whole game. The team's too competent. And even if he does, the Bills will just run down the field and score. So they can go tick for tack with the Titans. All right, so now moving on to the 3 games that I hate. Vikings-Panthers, like I said, guys, 2 super close teams. So when teams are like this close, it always ends up being like who has the ball last, who misses the kick, and that's like the hardest thing to try and decipher for Survivor. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm like, banking on coin flip decisions on making it through, right? So stay away from this. I think the Vikings are the better team. I think the Vikings can win, but McCaffrey's not coming back for the Panthers this week. It seems like he's not. So that's like a big hit to the Panthers too. So maybe that makes people more confident in, the Vikings as well. But I just still hate it. It's so close. If bad Sam Darnold shows up, then, it's the Vikings game. But if, Joe Brady and Sam Darnold have like a really good plan for taking and dissecting the Vikings, this could end up being one of those like early season games that we saw with the Panthers. And I think the Panthers do have a lot of believers in the league right now. I'm not one of them. I'm kind of off it. I thought that they played great. I thought they were very opportunistic, and that was awesome. But now they have to kind of settle in and start doing it against good opponents. And the Vikings, their record is what their record, but they are a competent opponent, a good opponent. So I want to stay away from this, especially when they're so close. That's why I won't touch that game at all. Second game I hate, Bengals Lions. So the Lions have been covering like the spread in all of their games. They haven't been winning. They've been close to winning, but they lost to the Ravens on that miracle field goal. They lost to the Packers when the Packers pulled away in the second half. They just lost to the Vikings on that crazy finish to the game too. So when I start looking at the Lions, as if you have this much fight, it's only a matter of time until the opponent that you're going against isn't gonna maybe keep up with you or isn't gonna surprise you on one of these freak endings. And are the Bengals maybe that team? I think we've seen enough out of Joe Burrow that his head's not right. Like, he still kind of makes these like amateurish decisions. So maybe it's a fumble, maybe it's an interception, and that kind of seals the game for the Lions like in the fourth quarter. You could just see that happening. And the Lions have been pretty consistent. They've covered the spread. They've been confident with are competitive in every single game they've had this year. This looks like a trap game for the Bengals, and as a team that's like coming out of nowhere, pushing for a playoff spot, this is a game that they should be concerned with. And it's because of that, and it's because of what the Lions have been doing this year. I want to stay away from this game. So I hate that game, Bengals-Lions. And the third game I hate, Seahawks-Steelers. It's just Geno Smith looked relatively confident on the one drive in the Rams game when he came in for Russell Wilson, but then he threw the interception on the game-winning one. So maybe with a full week of practice, game planning, everything like that, maybe Geno Smith comes out there and he's good enough to help the Seahawks win. And then to couple with that, maybe Ben Roethlisberger is, what we all expect Ben Roethlisberger to be, just a really bad quarterback, throwing terribly. The run game, maybe like Najee is he has to carry the load. We know this last game that he had cramps because it was so hot in Pittsburgh. He's not used to that. He's from Cali. So, the humidity really got to him. This is a game where they had to start managing Najee's workload because maybe he's just overdoing it, and, Geno Smith comes in there. That's an option, but I think the Steelers win this game. But the Steelers are just so inconsistent, and at any time the wheels could just pop off this team, and we've seen it this year. So that's why I hate it. It's just there's so many variables. There's backup quarterbacks, there's injuries, there's just terrible play calling. We saw that with the Ben Roethlisberger, Najee Harris 10-yard dump off to try on a fourth down that he had to get. It was just ridiculous. I have so many question marks around both these teams. And where it looks like one's just healthier, TJ Watt's healthy, outside of the Juju Smith-Schuster injury, the Steelers are relatively healthy. They have their starting quarterback. That seems like a recipe for success. But when your quarterback has been Roethlisberger, when you've been making the decisions you have been all year, I can't trust you to even beat the Geno Smith Seahawks with that terrible secondary and everything like that. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Hopefully there's some clarity on some 3 games there. I always try and stay with some games that if you guys have been picking along with me, that you'll be able to, tackle some of these games as well. So that we're in like lockstep. But hopefully that little quick breakdown. If you guys want more of a breakdown, I did a whole like week 6 preview a couple days ago. It's a bit long, 35 minutes, but yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoy and good luck with your picks this week.